Ladies and gentlemen, you might not know who my guest is tonight. I see a few of you actually are like, who is this guy? Look, I'm excited. All right, I love talking to people, okay? But over the past year and a half, I've been doing Forbidden Frontier. Hopefully you guys are watching, but I've been diving into rabbit holes left and right about ancient technology, ancient civilizations, and maybe future technology, future civilizations, and everything in between. And one of the people that I've found in my research is Ashton Forbes here, and I'm very excited to chat with him, and I'm just going to bring him on because I'm just that excited. Ashton, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Really look forward to digging in your brain about what you know about things. Oh, you're muted, sir.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. Right off the bat, I would just want to say that thank you for your audience for listening. For people that don't know, people maybe like in the intro just thought, okay, is this going to be something that's really out there? Yes, it's going to be really out there. But at the same time, it's grounded in reality. We're dealing with physics where if you ask yourself, like, what does the future look like? What does science and technology look like in the future? There is an answer. But it just seems so gray to us because we don't really have any perspective on what it might look like. So my goal has been to try to bring that to the people, that we can have some idea of what that is going to look like out there. And I think there's a certain faction of humanity that has figured out technology that is well beyond our current public paradigm. And it creates several political issues about, like, how do we tell people we've got this? And what does it mean for our civilization going forward? So looking forward to talking about these topics and really whatever else you want to ask me.
Well, first and foremost, I see you have an uncut sheet of Magic the Gathering behind you. Now, I've been playing Magic since '94, a long time. I'm assuming you've been playing for a long time. What set is that? A hollow sheet?
That's War of the Spark, if you're familiar with that expansion.
Oh, okay. Slightly newer. Okay.
Yeah,
Past
I'm
couple years,
a newer
right?
player, actually, even though I'm old enough to have played when I was a little kid. I had some Magic cards when I was a little kid. They're probably worth a lot now, but, it's old story of, like, mom threw them out and therefore we lost those cards or whatever. But yeah, I started playing recently. I just think it's funny how many comments I get on this uncut sheet. Like, I got this because I was trying to buy some Magic cards and Wizards of the Coast screwed me over, and they sent us these uncut sheets. So it looks really awesome, honestly. So I put it up there.
They're cool. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people recognize it, but it's also a good tool to explain to people how we manipulate the laws of physics. Because when you're playing Magic cards, when you're playing Magic cards, you can make like your night deck or whatever deck that's kind of fun. It's mediocre, but it's never going to dominate. Like, it's never going to win like 70% or more of your games, which is what I think professional players are looking for, a deck that breaks the paradigm. It attacks all the other decks in the meta on a different angle. I remember there was one case when I was playing on Arena, it was like a lands deck. And like the lands were killing you, and you're just like, okay, they like ended up having to do something about it because it was so unfun. But that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bend the rules to a degree where, like, just not breaking them. And this is what we're doing with wormholes and warp drives. Is that what we're doing is we're looking at space-time itself. And we're going, okay, we can bend the rules within Einstein's general relativity, within the mathematical formulas. And we get to those situations where we have this paradigm shift. And this is what Miguel Alcubierre figured out in 1994 with warp drive, is that if we look at these equations, we can actually bend space-time. And now we can do things that, from our perspective, would look like magic. And physics has agreed that it's possible. But it's just not like accepted right now. It's the age old, it's not currently accepted in the paradigm.
Publicly,
there's some reasons why.
Publicly, it's not accepted.
But this is where the UFO community comes into play. Whereas there's a lot of people that they hear the word UFO and they get turned off right away. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to unapologetically bring it back. I'm not saying UAP. We're talking about UFO, unidentified flying objects.
Yeah.
There's something to this phenomenon, is what I would tell people. I came into this phenomenon as somebody who was not really dedicated to any particular outcome, researching it. And there's something going on here. And 100%. If we have something where there's a craft that's hovering around, I like to use my phone here. If there's any object out there that's just hovering like this for prolonged periods of time, like over an hour, we have to ask the question, where's the energy source? What
True.
is it doing in order to pull that off? There's no rockets attached to it, no boosters. Like what's going on? How is it able to pull that off?
Yeah.
And if we ask that question to the UFO phenomenon, we come up with this completely different fuel source of energy called 0 point energy, which is quantum mechanics. We find out that there's this energy everywhere all around us. And a lot of people have been talking about it for decades. The
Tesla
public
was
seems
talking
to
about
support
it
it.
100 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla called it radiant energy. So there wasn't even electrical engineering didn't even exist when Tesla was about. And he invented alternating current, the power we still
Right.
use today. And we've just never figured, can we improve this? No, we'll just stick with the old generator spinning, right? That's all we got.
Right.
And so we have this energy source that is out there called 0 point energy. It's very real. And we just basically ignore it. But if you look at that question I asked you at the beginning is, what is the future for human technology? 0 point energy is like the number one answer. Is that
Right.
this is an area of physics that we agree is real, that there's just controversy over whether or not we can kind of tap into this. But our material science is getting better and better and better. We are making microchips and stuff that are smaller and smaller and smaller, almost unbelievably small.
Yeah.
Um, and this is where I think UFO phenomenon intertwines with real science and where our future is headed. So that's
So
my
what do you think
introduction for you.
UFOs are? Is it a government program
Mhm.
within a government program that's actually unlocked the secrets of this technology? Like, is it human technology or is it aliens? What do you brought up UFOs? Like, I just want to feel like let's dive in.
Oh yeah, well, so that's like to me the most boring aspect of it is it turns out it's
Okay,
good old human. We've got defense
that's what I
contracts.
think. I think it's humans.
So if you look, well, I don't know, maybe there's aliens out there. I'm not sure, but I will tell you, we've figured this technology out for sure.
Mm,
It's not just a situation where it's everything we see out there is aliens. Like
yeah.
if you look, you have to kind of understand the history of it to really get a good impression of how this is played out. And it does really go as far back as Roswell, potentially even further, the Foo Fighters. Like there's reports
Yeah.
that, and if you believe in some of this, like the paintings and stuff that you think they're depicting UFOs, it can go back thousands of years. So
The
when it comes to,
Sumerians.
us, whatever, the more I look into it, the less sure I am. But like I
Mm,
do kind of have this feeling that they're using this alien angle as like a distraction. It's like
facts.
the puppet and the puppeteer. You've got the alien, like you look at the craft again, and the distraction is you're looking at it going, "Ooh, aliens! Ooh, are they going to take me
Mhm.
to the mothership?" And people that are looking at the puppeteer are going, "Oh, wait, what's the energy source? How is that operating? Like, how can we manipulate that and recreate that?" You
Yeah.
know. But that doesn't mean aliens don't exist. It just means they're being used as a distraction, in my opinion, because the smart people are going like, whatever energy source that is, we can manipulate that. It's nothing like we've seen on our planet right now. And when you look into 0 point energy, just to name a couple papers, I would say Robert Forward in 1984 kind of figured out that we can actually use 0 point energy to do work to like power a battery in a theoretical sense, but it checks out logically, consistent with laws of general relativity. And then Hal Puthoff in 1989 that basically found out this 0 point energy basically explains gravity. And after a few other papers and many other people's adding on, like this explains all of the aspects of physics that we currently don't understand, like dark matter, dark energy. These are like the answers to why
Wow.
galaxies spin the same rate even further out than compared to the center, when we would
Yeah.
expect that they should be spinning much slower, or how we could have the expansion of the universe faster than the speed of light in the Big Bang, like dark energy. Like these concepts are all explained by 0 point energy.
And this
Uh,
is the late 80s in 89 that happened.
yeah, and then people usually ask me like, okay, well, who is right in the UFO community? Like, who do you agree with the most? Which, you
Mm,
know what, I'm not going to give you a roundabout answer. Like, Dr. Greer was the most right out of everybody. Like, and I call him Doctor, not because he's an expert of ufology, but because he was actually an ED physician that like then jumped into this UFO world somehow, which I kind of respect because I've been in healthcare my whole normal life, and I kind of just do this on the side for the most part.
That's
But
actually pretty wild to think about too. That this is, I mean, I try to tune into your streams because I find them fascinating. I have a newborn. He's 2 months old right now, so like my life's kind of a blur. But it's nice to get in and listen to you talk about certain things because it's always so fascinating. Every time I tune into your streams, you're always bringing up something that I had never heard of before. Um,
well,
so
that's what's crazy though, is that like there is all these physics concepts is once you just to break it down, it's like once you realize 0 point energy is legit and it's something that we can interact with
yeah,
based on like, these scientific papers, it opens the door to a lot of stuff that the public at least I had no idea a year ago that, we can have floating balls of plasma, that like cold fusion was potentially suppressed in the 80s, right around that same time as well.
yeah,
Um, and then all these concepts lead to this idea that, well, maybe we had UFOs, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe aliens fly around or like, flying saucers, but like we've got now balls of plasma. Like the big discovery that I think has been kept from the public is that plasma will self organize.
yeah.
And if it can produce a magnetic monopole, it can create a sphere, like a floating sphere of plasma that just naturally has these electromagnetic properties that it organizes into a sphere. It potentially can produce over unity, which is free energy, as we would call it, and it
Right,
has
positive.
mass reduction characteristics. So it just basically starts to defy the laws of gravity naturally, and that all these concepts are related together. And
Fascinating.
so I think at this point, scary enough, like we've got these balls of plasma, they're just drones for us. Like there's something inside there that's kind of ripping the electrons from the atmosphere and producing this ball of plasma. But for the most part, it's just like a drone that can defy gravity, that is illuminated and that we can see. And
Would that be able to be programmed or like how would this technology be used, right? Because like you think about a ball of plasma, what can that do for us? Like how can we use it for our advantage?
yeah, two ways. So from the energy question, like, okay, what's the energy source? Is
Right.
that
The radiant energy.
these balls, ball lightning, like the thing too is terminology in the physics community and in the UFO community. Both are very important because people use these words interchangeably. But we're talking about this idea of ball lightning, exotic vacuum objects is my favorite term for it because that's what Ken Shoulders, who is an engineer and physicist, scientist, who discovered them, was what he called them because he believed they were interacting with the vacuum energy, the 0 point energy. Um, Bob Greenier is another low energy nuclear reactions because cold fusion rebranded into low energy nuclear reactions. And they did this same reason why UFOs rebranded into UAPs is like a
Yeah.
lot of this. There's like stigmas that people have. And I just say, well, just break down the stigma. Like,
Right.
I'm going to call it cold fusion. So
I
these
thought
are,
it was more transmedium because it wasn't necessarily flying because of like the Tic Tac event. It went under the water. So they were like, it's transmedium. It's not necessarily a flying object. I mean
yeah,
that was one way it was explained why they switched to UAP.
spoiler alert, the hearings they're doing, I guess on November 13th or whatever, like one of the admirals is going to say, yeah, we're seeing them underneath the water more often than not. Like, honestly, and this is another trick because ball plasma is transmedium as well. Like, it can use the water in the air or potentially the water in the ocean as well as its source for those electrons that it needs in order to produce the plasma. And the plasma is almost like a little byproduct of just getting the right frequency and right radio. I don't know if it's potentially using a laser
Hmm.
in some small device that they've got figured out. Um,
Could it pass into like dirt, like in land? Can it, if it's true, it feels like why wouldn't it be able to?
oh, in land pass through solid matter. I mean, that's a big question that I ask. I mean, when you're dealing with gravitational waves or a scalar wave, which
Hmm.
would be a wave where you've canceled out the electromagnetic longitudinal wave. So normally it would be, like this. But imagine you have two 180 degrees out of phase of one or two waves, and they just cancel each other out. This is the big thing that mainstream academia just won't accept, even though it's experimentally proven, is that they would say there's nothing there, you know? But if I am pulling on a like a string both ways, the stronger I pull, even though I pull equally on both sides, eventually that string's going to break because there's stress in that medium. You can imagine that as the same in the 0 point energy of space-time, is that you're pulling on that. So the idea of 0 point energy is just an extension onto Einstein's general relativity, and says, okay, yes, space-time is being bent, and that's what gravity we see. But now it says, on top of that, the reason why that's happening is because we're in this sea of energy, like fish in a fishbowl, and we can manipulate that energy. We can pull out that energy, and we can move it over here, or we can manifest it by pulling it out of there. And it's very analogous to like a heat pump in terms of just moving the heat around, moving the energy around, but at a deeper scale. And just truthfully, the secret is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You want to interact with the smaller and smaller scales. So if you are somebody who's inclined to this, the thing that you need to remember is the Casimir effect. This is something you're always going to hear get mentioned because it's the best proof that negative energy is real. But it's not this mysterious substance that's out there. It's negative pressure that we can see happen when we take two conductive plates and we put them very close next to each other. We see this attraction, which gets exponentially more powerful the smaller and closer they get to one another. And people have already figured out they can use this and manipulate this to get energy and do work.
Produce energy.
Yeah. And but the real issue is material science one, is in terms of getting it
one more time
and scaled down.
Casimir?
Casimir. Hendrik
Casimir.
Casimir. 1948. He figured that out. So two, when you have to look at this from three perspectives, okay, everybody? One is you have to look at from the scientific perspective of what physics is possible. You also have to look at it from an investigative perspective of like, okay, what is the full story here that makes sense in terms of this phenomenon, especially when it comes to UFOs. And then the last one's the historical one of the physics and of, the stories that we have out there in UFOlogy. And they all seem to collide around the Manhattan Project. And so Hendrik, a lot of these people have figured this stuff out going back many, many decades, which is what scares me a lot, is that they were talking about 0 point energy. They were talking about this theory that branches off. And it turns out all these people and scientists also are involved with private military contractors and the CIA and the government as engineers officially with them. So it kind of surprises me that like maybe they just needed somebody to jump in with like a new set of eyes. And I think that anybody else that looks at this information that I'm giving you right now and finds out, oh yeah, it is all out there. And these guys are kind of openly talking about these concepts about warp drives, wormholes, being able to use this 0 point energy to extract energy from it, communication mechanisms, could be even faster than light communications, and mapping. So you asked, can you go through solid Earth? Yeah, you can use this to like map through the planet and find out where all the caverns and anything there is within the whole planet. So also it's a communication device. And if you don't believe me, then Hal Puthoff, 1989, gravity as a 0 point fluctuation force. He also has a patent. It's been approved 5 different times. The most recent time was approved just a couple of years ago. And it's just called communication system. And if you look at it, you'll realize it uses something called the Aharonov-Bohm effect, which is if there are no electromagnetic fields, why can I see there be a phase change when I shoot my photon through these slits? There should be nothing there to interact with it. And that's what he's saying there, is what that Aharonov-Bohm effect is proving, is that you can create this gravitational scalar potential that is in the medium itself. And his communication device manipulates that. And this is that same idea of canceling out your electromagnetic wave, but you're still sending like a ripple through that 0 point energy field. So the government's taking this very seriously. The private defense contractors are. The rest of the world just does not get it at all.
I wonder if it's because they can't comprehend it, or they're just too busy, or or focused on the wrong things. Most of society is just kind of tied up in identity politics, or they're just their own lives of just trying to make enough money to survive in this world, so that they can't actually thrive and move on to something like trying to understand zero point energy, or wormholes or anything along these lines.
No,
I
that's
find it
totally.
fascinating. And I want to, how far away? No, I have so many questions racing through my head right now. Well, we'll just start simple. What is a timeline that you think this could potentially reach the public? Obviously, you have people like yourself that are digging into this stuff, that are understanding it, that are trying to bring it into the public light. Are they even going to allow it to become? Because I feel like free energy would fundamentally change society, the way society functions, if it became normal, right, to use this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that, like, people, it's a big question of how long have they been hiding something that big? If you
Right.
see that, do you have a compelling public interest to let people know? Like, should you be forced to let people know, hey man, we like figure out a way to easily produce free energy, and like not just a
Yeah.
little bit, but like basically like a tap where you can just turn it on and energy comes
Anywhere.
pouring out, and you can just change the setting like that. Beyond any doubt, I'm sure they've already figured that out. And then it's just a question of, okay, well, yeah, if you've been doing it, hiding it for a long time, is this a crime against humanity? And yeah, then to your point is you can't just look at it in terms of like, oh, you absolutely must get that. It's like, okay, well, what are the negative costs of something like this? Like free
Yeah.
energy for everybody on this earth? Like, wait,
Who's going
how
to use
long
it
are
to
we gonna
destroy the
last?
world?
Like, or
Right.
just like sure. I always talk about destroying the world. It's doomsday in my mind. No, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. But even on a small scale, huge amounts of energy in the hands of people is going to be extremely destructive as
True.
well. So it's not that easy of a question to like answer, and I'm just going with it because nobody's told me to stop.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you read between the lines on what a lot of these, let's call them disclosure advocates, because they don't like to be called UFO people for some reason, like
Right.
whatever. I mean, let's just be honest. It's tied. The technology's tied to the UFO topic, but you're going to realize that when they're talking about national security, like, what are they talking about? National security? Aliens aren't national security. It's not like, oh,
Right.
you're gonna kill me if I tell you about aliens. Like, no, it's not.
I mean,
Everybody's
everything
talking
is
about
national
aliens.
security to those people. Are you talking to like Grush and Lou Elizondo, like
Yeah, yeah.
those
All
types?
those guys.
Okay, the government.
Schellenberger has said that he was protecting national security. He like wrote the DoD for permission. I'm like, how are you even getting a response from the DoD? Like, I'm begging them to
Yeah.
look at my MH370 evidence and give me an official response. Like, where's the
Yeah.
email account? Let me send an email.
Hook it up.
Yeah, like and Lou Elizondo is like, and to be honest, guys, like I don't like to look at people as bad people. They're not bad people, but like you kind of have to break the national security trust if you want people to believe you on something this big. Like,
Right.
if you're
I agree
saying
with
like,
that.
"Yeah, I've got one hand, being held behind my back while I'm telling you this," like,
They allowed me to tell you what I've told you,
what's
and
the
it's
thing
like,
you're hiding in the back? Like,
right.
what's the puppet master saying, right? Because you're telling me
Yeah.
aliens, but like, what's the thing that's national security that is so scary that these people are afraid that they're going to be killed? And I think the answer is free energy. I mean, that would
That
be
makes
big enough,
sense.
right? That's big enough.
100%. Yeah.
And it does answer the question that I posed at the beginning, which I think is this is the most important question. What is the source for this thing floating in the
Yeah.
sky? So this is for the Congress people out there, like this is the question we should be pushing. There's gonna be a lot of bullshit questions that are gonna be asked at this November hearing, this UFO thing. One
Yeah.
very good question I think to ask them is that, when you see the thing hovering, what do you think the energy source is for that? That's going to scare the DOE because the Department of Energy is supposedly in charge of the UFO phenomena. Okay, well, it's like, let's add this up. National Security,
Are they really?
Department of Energy. Yeah, they're the number one
Department of
dog.
Energy.
Yeah,
Wow.
Department of Energy. Not a lot of
Didn't even
normie
know
people
that.
know that. Not to call you a
I had no
normie,
idea.
but
I absolutely
not
am in the UFO
UFO
world.
phenomenon to realize,
I'll
but
own it.
the DOE apparently has like the Q clearance and the higher clearance than the president. So like the president doesn't get to know stuff that they know about. And when you
Okay.
look at the history aspect, the Atomic Secrecy Act, if it's like 1948 and 1954, but let's just call it 1954. Um, this made it so that if you talk about anything related to like nuclear power or weapons, like it's born secret automatically. So this gives them like a okay, we can just automatically make that secret. They were trying to undo the wrongs and the failures of the Manhattan Project, try to keep it more secret.
Yeah.
Add compartmentalization. So then they also take the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951, where they can now, if you make an over Unity device,
Take anything, right? For national
if you're a
security.
little if you're a little too soon to the 0 point energy party, let's say, right? You know, you
Yeah.
figured out some ways like magnetic motors, probably other stuff that people figured out. You know, we're taking that. But now we're at the point where like we're making microchips they're very small, and average people are going to start getting access to this type of stuff, and it's going to potentially come out. So 1970s too, I want to point out 1971 or 1969, I can't remember, somewhere in that range, Mansfield Amendment. This basically said that the government is not allowed to research things that are like not combat related directly. So basically what this did was an anti-gravity related technology and science research
Yeah.
all went underneath the defense contractors and couldn't be underneath the government anymore. So here's another big clue on this whole UFO thing is that you're never going to be successful asking the government to show you the secret files because long ago they already realized put it underneath the defense contractors. The government's just the liaison between them. You give us the final
Right.
product, we tell you this is what we're interested in, but those companies are the one with all the files on that, and they're not going to get access by FOIA. And what I'll also say is that how they hide it is literally just how they do it in the movies, like exactly the same. They've got umbrella corporations that are like direct, tied to the mother one, maybe even an intermediary between there as well. So you've got
Yeah.
all these umbrella corporations where they can just pop these up into existence. Now it's like a subcontractor contracting out to so and so to do some research or what have you. So there's no chance they're gonna you're gonna dig in there and you're gonna find that stuff. But this is how they hid the stuff from the general public and why we don't know. And then real quick, last thing I'll say is you may ask, well, okay, where are the people who are talking about it? There are a ton of people that are talking about it. The only way I know is because I found so many videos of just engineers just basically spilling the beans and talking about this idea of 0 point energy. Most of them talk about it in the exact same ways as well.
Yeah.
And then
Just
people
like floating around on YouTube or what? These videos?
honestly, Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer as well, has the biggest archive. I think it's called like the Disclosure Archive or something now. But he
Okay.
interviewed like all these engineers. Paul Sizz is one. He probably has a Robert M.L. Baker one. He's got a Hal Puthoff one. He's got a ton of interviews with a lot of guys that aren't with us anymore. But they were engineers that were working in black projects that were working for these defense contractors. And for them, though, it's like you got to realize, like, you have to get through this psychological check where you're like, okay, we just were working on magic. Like, I just watched, hypothetically, right?
Basically.
This thing just teleported from here to over here, right? And
Yeah.
know that it's related to this idea of 0 point energy, which the public just has no idea about. It's like, how do you live day to day? So for a lot of these guys, they just have this like somber but accepting like attitude, when they're like just
So
telling you
sad.
about it. Because
They
they're
know it
not even trying to
exists.
push it on you because they've just kind of given up and the public's just like, this is just too far beyond the world of now, can't really accept it. A lot of these guys died, last 10, 15 years, and they never saw any of this stuff come to fruition, and they've just known it's been possible for decades. Yeah. Scary, man.
Well, you asked earlier, the future looks so like it could look amazing, right? Because of this technology. I was talking to a buddy of mine. You might know him, Nacho Business or Nacho Coyote on X. Great friend of mine, and he was talking to me about interviewing because he's all excited. He's in chat. Shout out to Nacho. Oh, he's in chat right there. Nacho Business. What's up, buddy?
What
He was
up?
saying, what's the future going to be? Are we going to get the Jetsons? And I was like, or are we getting the Flintstones? It's like, because it really could. We are standing on this path of going in two different directions, and it's pretty incredible. Like, what an amazing time to be alive, though, because we really could get that sci-fi futuristic world where we have flying cars, and who knows? Like, it's amazing. We could be multiplanetary in 30 years, right? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing where I like the Jetsons or Flintstones. I'm stealing that, by the way. I normally say Fallout or Star Trek. Like we've got either space communism or the corporations have like this weird fascism and they just destroy everything but keep us as slaves, whatever.
Yeah.
It's really up to us, I think. And there isn't an easy answer for how you move forward. I think the first thing you do is you talk about it, which is why I spend so much of my own time, talking
You
about
really
it.
do. You are always streaming, whether you're on your own channel or like joining anyone else. And I appreciate you joining me.
No, it's fun. Like I like talking to new people about it and
Yeah.
new audiences as well. It may be too far out there for some people. A lot of people on this planet, it's so far out there that it's like a lot of people are never going to be able to deal with it that are on this planet right now. It's just as Max Planck had a famous quote, father of quantum mechanics, saying that science advances one funeral all the time, and that's the sad truth about it. But we can push it a little bit further by talking about some of this science more openly, just in casual conversation, but then also demanding from our representatives that we have conversations about this kind of technology and energy,
Right there. Yeah, huge.
because we see like Elon Musk, he loves solar energy, but that's like, drinking from the sippy cup,
I know.
It's cute. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh.
when the storm came in and destroyed all your solar panels, and now we just got to throw them in the junkyard because they're not biodegradable. Like, come on, man. There's energy all around us. Like, if we
Same
just
with the wind
look at the
turbines.
universe slightly differently, we don't need the solar panels at all. The sun, we don't even need that as well. It's convenient, but we can just extract energy from everywhere, and that's how people should think of a free energy device.
Yeah.
Is don't think of it in terms of it's producing something out of nowhere. Just think of it is churning up that 0 point energy that's all around us.
I
And
almost feel like we need a new Gene Roddenberry, because like Star Trek, I feel like, it spawned a lot of excitement for sci-fi future. The cell phone and like the idea that we can communicate and tell, I don't know, obviously not everything came to fruition from that, but like a new future that's presented with the connection to logic and science base that actually makes sense, fundamentally proven, as you said. Like we've already have the technology, it exists. Now we need to, like, instead of trying to explain the technology to the layman's in the world, try to paint the picture of what life could be for them to have the desire to call their congress people and their representatives to actually get that push that we need to actually get the true disclosure to bring it to the forefront, right? I think that's what really we need. More storytellers. I mean, we need to connect the culture side aspect of it, you know what I mean?
I 100% agree. And that's, I think, why I'm an influencer right now and not a scientist or just let it go either. Is that
Right.
really at this point I want to have a conversation like this with people, and I'm happy to talk a bit about the plane situation as well.
I do want to talk about it. Yeah, honestly, I've totally forgot about it, but
no, it's fine.
and I told you before you went live, I'm like, you're the type of person that I know we could just talk about random stuff and just end up in all sorts of different places. But yeah,
no, I enjoy it because we need people that are telling the story, like you said, of where we could be as a civilization. A lot of people, they're not going to learn the science. It's really that simple. But we need enough people that are credible people that look at the science of 0 point energy and accept that, yes, this is basically the next iteration of general relativity. You know, we went from
Right.
Isaac Newton to general relativity, and now we need to unify quantum field theory with large stuff, macro scale stuff we need. You know, 0 point energy, that's the answer. This explains dark energy, this explains dark matter. This actually will now open up a new resource of energy where we're tapping into the energy directly, all the energy that we use, the lights and everything. We're tapping into that effectively. And what that will do is bring us about like, you know, a new paradigm shift. And, you know, if there's huge implications to what that's going to do, but
Oh yeah.
if we tell the story the way that we want, that, you know, we can get through this, we can have abundance for everybody. We could have reverse aging capabilities potentially as well.
They say
Uh,
it's 3 years away.
we could travel the stars. We could go to other planets that are like Earth and
Yep.
just be there instantaneously. If there are aliens that are out there, we could communicate with them. I don't know how we
Such a
would.
crazy thought, but I see it. It actually
We could do all those
could
things.
it could happen.
And
I
that's
mean,
the thing
in
we
my
want
lifetime,
story,
right? I
right?
mean,
Yeah, that's the thing.
crazy.
It's not it's this is the thing too, is like I'm, you know, 40 something years old. And, you know, if you're in this age group, like this is within our lifetimes. If we push this, we can have the public do this because truthfully, the defense contractors have probably had this for well over a decade now.
Yeah,
So, you know, they might have had some of this stuff, some early iterations of it going back 80 years, more than that as well. But so we could actually see real change here, though, in terms of pulling some of that to the public for view.
yeah,
And we just have to we just have to talk about it, you know, just talk about it.
yep, yep, yeah. 80 years ago, it was probably like they found the faucet and they were like, "Oh, there's a faucet everywhere. Wow!" You know, and then like throughout the years, they figured out how to turn it on, and then they've turned how to connect to it. You know, now they're probably like they probably understand it on a fundamental level that they could just create these UAPs or UFOs and
Yeah.
use it on stealth jets. You know, they're probably using that shit on some
Yeah. I think
fighters.
what you're going to see a lot is, and already have been seeing a lot, is that these like three balls of energy that are stuck in like a triangle formation where like they are clearly like linked,
Yeah,
but there's no physical link between them. This could even explain some of these early black triangle sightings that people were seeing. But I'm going to pose another angle for you right now that I don't think I've posed out there at all, which is that what if these balls of plasma are like a very fundamental aspect of nature that like they're extremely easy to replicate. And once you figure out how to make these balls of plasma, like everything opens up. It's like figuring out how to make an automobile. All of a sudden, boom, now you've got this
yeah,
ball of plasma. It's unlimited energy, and you can start linking them together through like computer algorithms to get them to fly the way that you want.
yeah.
And now you've just unlocked all of Star Trek. Like
Well, it
everything
feels
Star Trek you can unlock.
if sorry, it feels like when you think about like a two-dimensional object and how a two-dimensional being views a three-dimensional object, it's just like an apple. It's just a flat thing. They don't see the shape of an apple, right? It almost feels like this is the understanding of going from our world to the next dimension up, being able to view the code in the matrix almost, right? You're able to fundamentally understand the way reality works on another level. You know, suddenly everything becomes it makes sense. And that's so fascinating to me. Like we are on the precipice of a completely new world.
No,
If we
100%.
allow it to come to fruition how we would hope that it would come, because of
Well,
course,
we're
you know,
gonna
the
find out
end of the
anyway.
world.
You know, you asked me
True,
earlier. You
true.
said, like, when is this gonna come around? Well, AI is already getting really good. Like, when I
Good
ask
point.
AI pointed questions about some of the stuff that I know is legit, like asking it how negative energy would interact with cold fusion, like, it gives you, like, a lot of answers are like, "Yeah, this is how it's doing it," you know? And not
Yeah,
all the 6 answers are right, but a few of them. And you realize, oh, like, AI, once it starts feeding into it all the papers, scientific papers that are out there, it's gonna figure out the answer right away. And people are going to be wondering, like, why is the AI telling me how to manipulate gravity and produce, unlimited energy? At least theories for free energy.
Right.
Then people are going to be, it's going to start getting really awkward, and that's coming around right away. So
there is that doctor who manipulated gravity like a month ago. Oh, there's several.
So
Okay.
here's the
Well,
thing too, like,
go
it
ahead.
goes
Go ahead.
back, people have been manipulating gravity, I
Of
don't, we don't have
course.
to go into all of them, but the big
Right.
ones for sure are Eugene Potklinov and Ning Li in the 90s, because they were figuring out superconductivity. When they were spinning this superconductor, they were seeing mass reduction effects. And so the government, have they been killing people? Probably, let's just be honest, but it's more discrediting disinformation and like defunding people. Honestly, those three things are powerful enough that they rarely have to like make somebody disappear. And then the rest of it's just on us.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna say it, we're retarded. Like we're like like
I can vouch for myself.
Yeah, we are just very tribal, and we get stuck in our ways, and especially now more than ever, we are stuck in this situation where whatever tribe I'm on, like it's just feelings over facts. And in that situation, science dies.
It's true.
Like Julian Schwinger, he's famous physicist, won a Nobel Prize for quantum electrodynamics. He quit the American Physical Society because he got interested in cold fusion, and they wouldn't publish his papers in the late 80s, early 90s before he died. So he quit because he was like, basically, this is how science dies, is if you're like gatekeeping and you're like, yeah, sorry, because they know that whichever people publish it, like that gives credibility to the work.
So they're preventing it, right?
Yeah. So it's like, you asked me, like, how do they hide this? And the answer is like easily, like too easily, actually. Like maybe too easily to the point where it's like, that's why they don't mind me talking about it, because they're like, man, this is getting really awkward. Make a difference. It turned out it was like way easier to hide this than we hoped. And now like no one's ever going to believe it, like ever, because no one's going to trust the government after this or before this.
Yeah. Do you think how many lists do you think you're on?
How many lists? I don't know, man. Too many. Too many, like, yeah, I don't know. I just like to say my life expectancy goes way down, but I don't know. Like, I think it helps everybody to get this information out there. But there's, if you ask me like how I think the inner workings of all this stuff plays out, is that I think there's factions out there on either side. Like, imagine another perspective where like you've been working on this technology since like the 50s or 60s, and you took it over, passed the baton, was passed to you from people who are like in the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
And you've been hiding it, and you're just cold-blooded. Like, even if you do interviews, you would never crack. You would never say what you knew. But now you're in your 80s and you've got grandchildren, right? And you're looking at your grandchildren, you're going, wait, okay, they're never going to get free energy either. Like, I've been hiding this so long, and it's been hidden so well that like it's never going to come out. And now even if we do admit it, no one will believe us anymore either. So I think there's some of those people that have changed their ways from their earlier days too, where we've just come that far, and science has become bullshit. Like, you can now, you
don't trust the science? What do you mean?
It's just, and the same reason why Julian Schwinger quit the American Physical Society is that it's just become, it's that the incentives have bbeen corrupted. And now it's about who's paying the bills, what outcome they want to get, who do they know on what editing staff,
like
that's science for sure. And then discrediting people that go against the science. And then when there's no science at all behind people, then it's just, oh well, they're just in the public health or whatever it is. If they're not Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye the Science Guy, if they don't have their support, right? But that's the world we currently live in right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And so we just have to collectively, as citizens, bring the information forward ourselves. And it works, guys. Like it works. I have people tell me all the time about who they told about, the missing plane, about the 0 point energy stuff. I have some reason to believe that like Congress is interested in the science, at least in general.
Cool.
Because I think what we're going to find out is that the people that they're getting their inside briefings from in these skiffs or whatever are like the same people that were reading their scientific papers. Like if you've been watching my streams and stuff like that, it's going to be a lot of these dirds. Actually, are you familiar with the dirds?
No, explain it for me.
Okay. So the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. You can Google that, DIRDS.
Okay.
These might be the most important scientific papers of our lifetime. There's like 38 of them. And Hal Puthoff basically got these commissioned from the Defense Intelligence Agency. And the View, he knows like all these defense contractors, these guys that worked in labs, that some of them now are in universities, etc. And they're writing scientific papers on how to extract energy from the vacuum, magnetohydrodynamics, advanced propulsion systems, warp drives, wormholes. So basically everything you've got there, negative energy and how negative energy can be used and how we can actually achieve negative energy. And it's not just some myth. These papers, I think, are what most people need to be reading out there, because when you check that out, these are some of the people that are briefing like the congressmen and what have you, and some of these UFO people behind closed doors. Like Lou Elizondo has said.
Where can I read these?
If you know the names, you can Google them. But otherwise, if you just Google the DIRDS, the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, you're going to probably find a bunch of links. I can send it to you after if you want.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you.
For your audience, if you Google them. And most of them, they're kind of tough reads, but some of them are stuff that normal people can understand.
Okay.
But don't look at. They're not. Even though the concepts are fantastical, like these are serious scientific papers that are not nonsense. Like, and the government commissioned these. I think that those papers are probably the plausible deniability for them to say, like, oh, yeah, we already showed you that we had this stuff. You just weren't paying attention. We made all the papers that we had, public when it was asked for by a FOIA request. Here's all the papers. And then that way, when it does come out that we've got crazy technology that's beyond the paradigm, and potentially are doing horrible things with it, that they can at least say, yeah, we didn't hide it.
We didn't hide it since this
that
certain time, since that one point. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Malaysian flight. Now, I've heard about this a lot, especially in the past year and a half, because of Forbidden Frontier. Which, by the way, I would love to have you on that show. I host it with Nerdrotic and X-Ray Girl and Quarter Black Garrett. It's every Sunday night, and you are always welcome. I've talked to you. I've mentioned you to them many times. So please come on the show, and we can have this conversation again with a completely different audience, much bigger audience. They're pretty big streamers. So, but we've randomly talked about it, right? Because we talk about UFOs stuff, cryptids. We go into the Forbidden Frontier, right? That's the name of the show. So, the Malaysian flight I've heard about, and I've never really looked into it until I saw your account. I don't remember exactly when I first found out about you. I think it was sometime last year.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of one of your main things that you talk about, that you break down, that you prove that the video was not fake at all. I find that very interesting, because that makes the video all the more crazy to look at, because I've seen the video before, and CGI and whatever, the person in me that I'm seeing something fantastical. Of course, I don't believe it, right? It's and I think that's the general consensus with this video. But if it's okay, amazing, thank you. But when you see it,
play this part. This is the slow mo here.
Yeah, when you see this, and you know that this is real. Now, for those who want more proof, I highly suggest in the description below you can find the links to his channel. He does he talks about this a lot and breaks it down, and has very gone over the with a fine tooth comb on how this is real and not fake. This is a real video of the Malaysian flight poofing, and it's got the three. They're plasma balls of plasma. I'm assuming, right? And
yeah, so this is where the
what are we
heat
looking at?
signatures of these orbs, and you can even see them reorient right there, right before the zap. Like, this should be all anyone has to see to know what we're looking at here is real. Like, no one could even come up with what we're looking at here. You can even faintly see these dark lines in front of the orb.
And they come in right before the
when they pinch like that. I actually just showed a video earlier, I think it was yesterday, of Bob Lazar talking about this same pinching effect with these.
That blew me away. Let's talk about that too.
Wild. Yeah, should I pull that clip up? Should we watch it? It's only
sure.
Like
yeah.
Now that you've seen
it's
this
amazing.
Thing, also, I want you to pay attention to two more details. One is the heat signature in the orbs, which is indicative of cold fusion, and the temperature, which is like almost ambient. And then right here, this black endothermic event. This is not an explosion. It's not hot. It's cold. And in just 4 frames, 4 frames, the whole thing's like this right here is negative energy. We're looking at negative energy right there. Any physicist that you're looking at, assuming the video is real, and like I know the videos are real. And like you said, like the amount of evidence is just beyond the amount.
I mean, I have it pulled up. You have an incredible document of just all the. I mean, it's a PDF document or a Google Doc that you just have all this information. Is a lot.
Yeah. There's PDF.
He has it on his site. You could check it out. Yeah,
so we've got also the FOIA requests and stuff that aren't even like listed on there, where everything's being blocked. Like the U.S. government is hiding something about this plane in particular.
Yeah,
and it also coincides with what UFOlogy is saying. So here, I'll pull up the Bob Lazar wormhole one.
Yeah.
There's my evidence list. I mean, the plane on the video is a perfect overlay of the actual real MH370 too. Like, not even just the mob, but like that actual plane. And enough forensic analysis to show you that if you
bottom side of the disk are the 3 gravity generators. When they want to travel to a distant point, the disk turns on its side. The 3 gravity generators produce a gravitational beam. What they do is they converge the 3 gravity generators onto a point and use that as a focal point. Then they essentially bring them up to power and pull that point towards the disk. The disk itself will attach onto that point and snap back as they release space back to that point. Now, all this happens in the distortion of time, so time is not incrementing. So the speed is essentially infinite.
Wow.
I mean, I saw this earlier today, and I had to watch it a few times, and I'm like, is he really saying that? Like, is this really what I'm hearing? Because it sounds so impossible.
So here's the crazy part. This is the real, like, why Bob Lazar. This is the reason why Bob Lazar deserves vindication. I don't know what year that interview was, but it was in the 90s for sure. I mean, George,
he looks young,
really young there. Miguel Alcubierre was 1994, I believe, where he came out with his warp drive paper. So before that, like, it was not mainstream accepted. Even after that, really wasn't mainstream accepted about the idea of manipulating gravity to make a warp drive or a wormhole, which are two just different. It's like turning the throttle up on your engine. It's all just manipulating gravity. Manipulating gravity is manipulating space-time itself. When it comes to 0 point energy, now you're just adding or removing 0 point energy from a region of space, and you're manipulating gravity. And you get all the benefits and costs that come along with that. You pull that energy out, you're getting free energy. You're going to make that area colder. You're going to reduce the refraction rate within that region, the permittivity of that region of space-time. So just like if you were in your fish tank, pulling a little bit of water out of that fish tank, out of that fish bowl, same concept with the energy all around us. And Bob Lazar explains it pretty beautifully there. The question that I would want to ask him is that you ask, like, why are they converging? What's the significance of the convergence? Well, it's just Coulomb's force. So if you look at Coulomb's force, you see that in charged particles that are approaching one another, their charge increases exponentially as the distance reduces because they fall off by something called the inverse square law, which means that as things separate, the force decreases by the square of the distance. So when it does the opposite, the force is increasing exponentially. So when those orbs are collapsing, like they're doing that, and they're getting to a point where they break something called the Schwinger limit, named after Julian Schwinger. And when you break through the Schwinger limit, which is a very powerful, focused area of electromagnetic waves, then you can actually break through to the fabric of the reality. Really, if you look at the dynamic Casimir effect, which does this, what happens is it releases photons, these virtual particles that are constantly popping into existence. They actually get popped into our reality, and they don't destroy themselves. So it's kind of hard to explain like what the best representation for it is, but really interacting with the fabric of our reality.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like if the fabric of reality is a blanket, it's basically just poking a hole through the blanket, right? I mean, as the base version of what you just explained, which in itself still seems pretty insane. But
yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, and I'm sure you probably will, I think more and more you'll realize as you just experience life and our reality, you're gonna go, yeah, this does kind of explain my experience. Even to the level of like why you feel resistance when you move around. Sure, some of it's friction and air resistance, but you're feeling resistance because you're in a medium as well. Like if you were to look at atoms, most of it's empty space. If you really scale it down and like microscope in onto the atoms, most of it's still empty space. Well, so what is that? What is that empty space?
Right.
It's below our perceivable level. That's a good way to look at it. But there's stuff there. There's energy hanging out right there. And that's why the quantum level and kind of getting to that unification theory is so important. So just kind of to flip it back to the plane, you know, I can't, I want to make sure that the plane is tied to this, because that's one of the good ways to get proof that the videos are real. We just watched an endothermic event, a negative energy event, this cold, dark zap of the plane. Biggest clue there is that it is going, what did we just see? Did we just see a missile hit it? No. If a missile hit it, it would be white hot. We'd see this explosion there. Did we see an annihilation event? There was some kind of antimatter reaction? Questionable, but there's too much going on with these orbs. They're like spinning around the plane, mapping it in the other video.
Yeah. And no parts of the plane was found ever.
No, there was a few parts of the plane that were found.
Oh, there was.
Found in Africa. And I mean, some of them are questionable. Really? Like there's depending on what you think happened in the plane, then some people think that those were planted, because the official search never found anything. Random civilians started finding pieces of debris in Africa. And right away, people were suspicious because Africa was too far away. Like they were expecting the debris to wash ashore in Australia, near where they're claiming the plane crashed. But nothing was ever found near where they claimed this plane crashed. And nothing washed ashore in Australia either. It started washing ashore in Africa. Now, this is important because a lot of the conspiracy theories that were out there speculated the plane must have got to Diego Garcia military base, the American military base. And they got attacked if you mentioned this. But this theory, I dug it back up. This showed up like just days after the plane disappeared. This wasn't a theory that invented like a year later or something like that. It was just days after people were floating this idea that the plane ended up Diego Garcia, because they weren't finding anything. Like if a plane crashed somewhere, like people were expecting to find it like the next day.
Yeah.
Like not this like, oh, we're going to go search for like 3 years for the plane.
Yeah. So, what year was this? What year did this happen?
Yeah, in 2014.
14, okay. So not that long ago.
10 years ago. Depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, 10 years flies by for me these days, but
true. I understand that because we're not too far apart age-wise, but you know, still technology.
Like think about like how often have you ever heard of planes just disappearing? You know, like even like in the last 10
Bermuda
years,
Triangle, but
plane.
that's I
Like
don't
no,
know. I can't name one.
even Air France 447, which was another one in 2009 that people like to compare to because it crashed in the Atlantic Ocean. They found the black boxes and the debris in under 2 years. And a lot of that got delayed because they tried to use drift analysis, and the drift analysis is useless. It's just not accurate. But they even found that one. So that's the only one that's even similar. And then part of the reason too is that planes don't just disappear in 2014. We've got
Right.
thousands of satellites in the sky. Now we have 10,000. And yes, they're all being tracked. Like there's a big board, Space Force. Like this is one of their things that they're doing. We're tracking basically every object in the air. We don't need to actively track them because we have AI. The moment anything goes off course, our AI is going to pick it up like just like that, going to determine whether or not they need to allocate additional resources to it. Guys, like this is not, it's not the 90s anymore. You know, we've got like computers that are managing all this stuff. And if you can do it at home, the military is several decades ahead of you on that. So,
Yeah.
and planes don't crash without leaving debris fields. Like there's no like magical landing in the ocean and then the plane just like sinks to the bottom without anything happening. Like if you think they're going to find some plane at the bottom of the ocean perfectly intact with like all the bodies and the seat cushions and all this stuff that floats like just inside of it, no chance. That's never going to happen. So
no,
it's pretty clear something happened to this plane. Some of my favorite quotes that I haven't mentioned a lot are what Florence DeChangi found out. She did like actual hardcore investigative reporting. And I wish like 10 years, if it was me 10 years ago, I would have been asking people a lot of questions because you want to get people's impressions. Like what was their feelings? Like what were the stories that were being told behind the scenes? And everybody was kind of telling the same story. Like the White House was calling Malaysia every day. That's pretty weird. Normally it's like Secretary of State would be calling for like, you know, hostage negotiations, stuff like that. The White House is calling every day. There's only one American passenger on board, one adult, two babies or children. And that the Chinese people, the Chinese embassy was trying to tell people that you can't understand. It was a very confusing situation. And you're going like, what do you mean we can't understand? Like, it's a pretty clear situation. Like, did this plane crash or did it not crash? Some of the better ones were that one of the police chiefs, the Indonesian one, said that his counterpart, I think referring to Malaysia, told him what really happened to the plane. And you're going like, okay, now this person's telling me a story of a cover-up. The nephew was told by a friend that was in like the defense ministry that they were sorry for their uncle, the pilot, that he was collateral damage. And you're going, what the hell, man? When you add up some of these stories that people were telling, it tells a pretty clear story that like this plane was hijacked.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just some rogue terrorists that stole the plane.
Yeah.
This was like a state-sponsored hijacking that happened in this plane and a cover-up related to it. And if you can throw your biases aside for 1 minute, there's only one plausible candidate. When you just
the Rothschilds,
the United States government, you know. Now, if you want to call it the Rothschilds, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, sure.
Well, there is a connection. There is a story that there was some scientists or doctors that had patents for a microchip that were on this plane.
Yeah, so this, I think they threw this out.
It's just one of the stories, you know, that I've heard.
The funny part is those scientists are definitely the reason, just not those particular ones and not that particular patent. The patent that they were claiming in that patent, that's not how patents work. Like patents are actually, in that case, the company would own it. Those people dying wouldn't change anything. And those people for that one patent weren't even on the plane. And so they used that. Like the media used that to be like, this was debunked. These people weren't even on the plane because they really weren't. We checked every passenger. Shout out to Arwen of MH370X, by the way. She did crazy work and looked up every single person to make sure they were on the plane, what seat they were in. Wow. And this time we found out about the actual free scale semiconductor engineers on board the plane. It's not that there was 5 of them, there was 20. And 12 of them were Malaysian nationals and 8 were Chinese nationals. And they were connected to U.S. aerospace and defense. And if you look at them and look at, they just come out with the new microchip. And what do we spend all the first half of this talking about is like microchips are the way to interact with this 0-point energy.
Yeah.
They come out with a new microchip that was extremely tiny. And it wouldn't, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that they probably had some either free energy or gravity manipulation type effects going on with that are probably similar or prelude to what we're seeing going on with the orbs to the plane. So to me, the answer becomes pretty clear that those people being on that plane means that this was an espionage operation or counter espionage, however you want to look at it. But like those people are the motive. There's way too many people on board this plane, like especially from this engineering company. They shouldn't be there. They're taking that technology to China, literally. They're on the plane going to China. And they work for the American
That's
company.
what they were on. They were on their way to China with this technology.
And
these microchips that can connect to
still is unaccounted for, that like is just like packed as like electronics. And
it was unaccounted for when? What do you mean by that? Because we don't know where the plane is, right?
So there was like they added waybills to it. They ended up having to admit that there was these lithium-ion batteries on board the plane. Then they didn't admit it until like the 20th, 2 weeks after this plane disappeared. This is
weird.
We're honestly in a P. Diddy situation here, where like if you just objectively look at all the evidence with a renewed lens, and people will do what I did over and over again throughout the years. You're like, of course, this was like a hijacking and cover up. This is not just some low tier operation. This was like some Ocean's 11 shit that was going on here. And people don't know that reference, just a bank heist movie, all planned out kind of is the point.
Perfectly.
And I mean, there's batteries on this plane. They were obfuscating everything around it. They came up with the South Indian Ocean narrative exactly on March 13th, 2014, 5 days after the plane disappeared. Before that, people had no clue what happened to this plane or where it was. You're like, how do you have no idea where the plane was? Like, why aren't you telling us like where your radar was tracking the plane? Why aren't you saying anything about anything?
Right.
If you watch the press conferences, it's so weird, but also in retrospect, so obvious that they were covering something up. When they're talking in the press conferences, usually they're saying stuff like, we'll tell you that later. That will come out in the official investigation. And you're like, I'm looking for my loved ones. They might be in the ocean and you're telling me nothing.
Right.
Like you can imagine, like if I was a family member, I would have gotten arrested too. Like some of them got arrested because they were freaking out, because in their shoes, they know they're being lied to. And the government knows that it's just going to look like grief from the media for anyone who's looking at it at home on their TV. But the truth is that there was something super sketchy to happen. And who could cover it up? Like Russia and China love them, hate them, whatever. They don't have the world media under their thumb.
That's true.
The people that have the world media under their thumb is the United States government. Like, why was journalists not asking basic questions like, hey, we know we've got satellite systems everywhere. Why are we pretending like we didn't see the plane? Or we've got this acoustic system. I talked to a guy in the Navy. You just pick like a random person in the Navy and be like, hey, do we have any acoustic systems? It'll tell you about SOSUS. We've got an acoustic system there where like literally nothing is hitting the water without us knowing exactly where it hit the water. Like that's how powerful our acoustic system is.
What about the video?
Certainly not a giant plane. What?
Who made the video? Where did the video come from? And when did it first surface?
To the point of like, if it was fake, where's the hoaxer? Where's the project?
No. If it's real.
No, I know.
Where did it come from?
I want to point this out though, because a lot of people like say, oh, you don't ask them hard questions and stuff like that. Where it's like, man, it's just because we're kind of past the hard questions. But like, if these videos were fake, where is this hoaxer? Like, where? Like, actually give me a full story that makes more sense. This is what I implore people. A lot of people just say, "Oh, somebody on YouTube said this was fake," or they claimed it used a VFX in it. Blah blah blah. Like, I need a full story to actually make some sense, because anybody can say this looks like this, and somebody just manipulated this, and this is fine. But like, Give me the story for like how and why this is fake and why it seems to match all this physics that's out there. Most importantly, where is this plane? Like, where is the actual plane? So we're looking at a drone video. We can see the drone in it. So there's no denying that it's a drone video. Like, we actually see the nose of the drone. We know it's an MQ-1 model variant.
Like a military drone.
Gray Eagle. Yeah, and ultimately what kind of drone it is, I don't really care. What I can tell is that there's a camera underneath the wing on its
right.
loadout.
Okay.
I think we can isolate it because we see this like weird, maybe it's the wing, maybe it's the top of the camera, whatever. But this is clearly a real drone and a real drone video. And I don't know how anybody would have known to fake this in 2014. It feels like you would have to have some insight to know what something was supposed to look like in order to pull this off. And the satellite video, like this is like, obviously you have to speculate because nobody knows anything about our satellite capabilities, certainly not our spy satellite capabilities. But there's a big clue. It says NROL 22 in the bottom left, where there's these coordinates that are clearly satellite coordinates, or, you know, coordinates of looking at something on the ground, like in Google Earth.
Yeah.
In fact, they're exactly the same as Google Earth. They have 6 decimal places. And the NROL 22 is the first launch of the space-based infrared system in 2006, 2005, one of those days. So you start looking that up. Ask AI about it, Google it. We find a bunch of videos about it. We find out they're incorporating or have already incorporated mid-Earth and low-Earth orbit satellites into it. And then it's a giant constellation of satellites. Find a video on Lockheed Martin's website. Shows them scanning like this, like the whole planet. You know? Scan the whole planet. So it doesn't take long to find out, too, about this sentient program that we have, that we literally use AI to like just track anything that's out of the ordinary. And the AI will pinpoint things that are points of interest.
Also on the entire globe.
Yeah. So it doesn't take long to figure out that, of course, we've got the entire globe scanned like this. The question is just like, how good is the imagery on any one given location at one given time? And of course it's video. What do you mean? Of course. Why? Of course it's video. Like at this point, like what year do we think we're in right now? Like I've got video on my phone. Of course they've got video on their satellites. And it's not as simple as like you're not even looking through satellites anymore. It's not how it works. It's not like I'm looking through an optical satellite. We found out there's only 5 optical satellites left, actually. And there's like thousands in the sky, at least for the US government, because they're using infrared, probably some gravitational ones that we don't even know about at this point. Synthetic aperture radar is basically like the dark night, where you're just like able to see everything out there. Next generation, like gravity-based ones, will be able to see you inside your house. Like they'll be actually have like 3-dimensional modeling of like us where we're hanging out right now.
Wow.
So anyway, point is, we've got all this stuff. No possible way a plane's disappearing. Just absolutely no chance. The coordinates are the Nicobar Islands. And there was a lot of controversy on social media about where these coordinates, somewhere in the South Indian Ocean, which is where the mainstream idea is where the plane went. But no, we were able to prove actually through just math. And this one's mostly on me. There was somebody else that helped contribute, but like could tell that based on the coordinate shifts and the plane turning to the left in both videos, that this had to be the Nicobar Islands in those coordinates. Couldn't be the South Indian Ocean. There was 2 possibilities based on there being a minus sign or not. Well, this was really significant because the moment we found out where those coordinates were, I started looking at witness statements. I was like, okay, so where are the witness statements?
Right.
First thing I find is Catherine T. within 100 miles of those coordinates. Is Catherine T. on a boat that night. She has probably the #1 witness statement about this plane out of anybody. Extremely well documented, talked to all the experts, all of them. Like she was answering questions on a blog just days after the plane disappeared. The moment she landed, she reported it to the police. Like she saw the plane. Everybody agrees she was in the right place. She just her story gets ignored. Why? Because she saw the plane glowing orange, flying low, descending with smoke coming out of the back of it. And you're like, wait, what?
Glowing orange, not on fire.
Yeah, more like she says like a glowing like mist around the plane, like a haze is the way she claimed it.
Okay.
So right away, this is a fire event that she's just without any more information. You say,
Yeah,
okay, you're talking
seemingly
about
so.
fire or something going on, right? Like the glowing orange, it turns out, is that bromine is a halogen gas and it comes from the fire extinguishing devices. So if they have a chemical
Okay.
reaction going on down there, which is what the fire extinguishing gases are trying to do, then it could be releasing bromine, which could cause this orange haze. And then you start finding out right away. This didn't even take long after that, which is to find out there's all these other witnesses, and they're all corroborating a fire event. You got Mike McKay, the first witness, who sees the plane on fire the same time the plane goes dark. Same time.
Wow.
And you're like, wait, what? There's a guy that saw the plane on fire. This is where, like, a year ago during the investigation, when I first saw, I'm like, oh my God, this is real. Like, there's like this whole story of this fire. And people say, hey, Ashton, like, why do you care about this fire event? Because I can see smoke coming out of the back of the plane in both videos.
Yeah.
I've wondered
And
why there's this smoke coming out of the back of the plane.
yeah.
And
And the plane in the video is bright. So the entire plane is hot. Right?
yeah,
It's
it's
you wouldn't expect
hotter
that with
than the atmosphere, but which is or that the ambient background, which is what you would
r-
expect. We don't
right.
know the gradient scale. We don't have numbers because they can change, compress it to make it
Okay.
look however they want. But we can tell
True.
the engine's red hot, so we have a pretty good idea of the temperature. There's nothing that looks off from the temperature, but we can see
Okay.
that the smoke is coming out of the belly of the plane, and you can see there's this heat signature in the belly of the plane, and that's hot
Can you
smoke.
bring it back up again?
Yeah,
Just so we can visual aid.
yeah, it'll help. So right
Fascinating.
away, we're seeing
So
these witnesses, and these
yeah.
witnesses are all corroborating a fire event. And really, the
And this
drones,
is all around those islands.
um, no, they're all around Malaysia.
Okay.
Most of the rest of the witnesses saw the plane right as or after it went dark. Catherine T is the one who was like in the path of the plane. I mean, right here, you can see the smoke stack up when they fly
Yeah.
underneath the plane. And people are going, well, contrails. Like the difference between contrails, smoke, exhaust, even this could be fuel being drained, dumped out of the plane as well. But there's accurate dispersion here as well. But you can see it starts to stack up. So this again, if this was a VFX, this would not be stacking up like this. That's a small detail to add into your video. And we can really tell it's smoke when we zoom in. The camera operator is manually controlling this too. Like they're manually controlling this camera tracking the plane, which is a pretty good job of them, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, they lose it a few times, but you can see the smoke pretty clearly here. And it does kind of look like it's coming from the engine, and it's not until we zoom in that we can tell it's not coming from the engine. So right here, they zoom in. They must have a wider field of view. That must be how they were tracking it. I think this must be cropped. So right here, I mean, look at that heat signature in the belly of the plane. That's not the engine.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And you can actually see that that's the smoke, because you can actually see if you look to the right, that's exactly what happens. The smoke is cooling the moment it hits the atmosphere, and it gets
Right.
cold by the time it gets to the back of the plane.
Yeah,
That's
that initially it looked like that was just the other engine on the other side.
yeah, but you can
But
tell
that
that the plane's tilted, so you actually can't
right.
see the engine on the
You
other
wouldn't
side.
be able to see that engine, right?
And look, when I just changed the frame, look at how different it is from one frame to the next. This is real smoke. This is real fluid dynamics. There's like 3 or 4 times where we're seeing just like real fluid dynamics. Like this is real. I mean, look at the heat signature of the plane. Every frame it changes. Like this is not just some plug-in or something that somebody added in there. So we see this story of this fire event. We're seeing the story of this fire event on this, which is where, admittedly, story gets a little bit convoluted at this point, where it's like, okay, we've got this fire event, but then we're warping the plane. So initially, early on, I thought, okay, well, let's just be optimistic and think that like we saved the plane or something, right? We teleported that plane. We didn't annihilate it. We're teleporting it from one location next. To the Bob Lazar video, I think we are teleporting. I think we are creating a wormhole. I think we figured out the universe is not what the public thinks. We can literally rip a hole between 2 points in space and time and use
or connect two pieces, right?
Yeah, and use quantum entanglement to do it, right? You have the 3 orbs over here, let's say, and then we have our 1 orb over here, and you entangle them together, and then these combine, and they slingshot over here to this one.
Right.
Teleportation from our perspective, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. We're manipulating the medium in that situation.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
So what did we do into that plane? If you add it all up, add up all the evidence, if you look at it with a fresh set of eyes, it clearly points to a fire event, and these videos being real, crazy as they are, and most likely a teleportation event, but still some chance of annihilation type event going on. For the people that are out there like, oh, the plane got remote controlled to Diego Garcia, that could still fit in with this. At the end of the day, I don't have 2 videos on the other side of the plane reappearing out of space-time or whatever. People tell me that it could reappear right underneath in a hangar at Diego Garcia, that it could land somewhere on some other island and get people off the plane. I don't know. What I will say is that I think that everybody on the plane probably died, most of the people. Not necessarily from the zap, but from the fire. Lithium-ion batteries are like super, super, super dangerous.
Yeah, I've seen lithium. It goes up.
500 pounds of them on this plane. They got banned like right after this plane disappeared. And 500 pounds in the cargo bay, like that's the recipe for a disaster. If those things were on fire and smoke was going through the air conditioning system, that would have been the worst, because you're going to be sitting there. You're going to like not really be able, something's going to smell a little off, but then all of a sudden, boom, you just go to sleep.
Yeah,
you wouldn't even recognize it probably. You just be like, oh, it's getting hazy in here, and then you fall asleep, and then there's no waking up. Extremely toxic, extremely deadly. And so that's what I think scares me the most. And then overall, it's some kind of message. It's a story that you're telling here. Is I took your plane, I put it on fire, and then I warped your plane away. You were trying to get these scientists.
Who's it a message to, though?
That's a message to our adversaries that we're playing on the next level.
You're not getting our technology. You thought you were getting these scientists.
Tired of it getting stolen as well. Like this is a situation too where everybody's going to figure it out. You're just delaying people.
Right.
And so in this case, you're sending them a message like, hey, we can, anytime we want, we can make you disappear. Nothing you can do about it. It's going to look natural. Your plane's just going to vanish. Not going to be there anymore. What's the public going to say?
Right.
So it's a message for sure. Where like, yeah, we have supremacy, because you imagine going from like ground supremacy to air supremacy to space-time supremacy. There's actually already a word for it. It's
wild.
called 6th generational warfare. It's already a
6th generational warfare.
You guys can look it up on your AI's Google Chat or Chat GPTs and
I like Grok. Grok's not bad.
I like it. So yeah, ask me about 6th generational warfare. It'll say space-time manipulation. It's like, whoa, okay. This is where Robert J. O'Neill, guy that shot Osama bin Laden,
I follow him.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He made a post saying that MH370 was never a mystery and that it was a warning to China. And I saw that and I'm like, he's not following me. I'm like, what is this? This is weird.
Yeah.
This was September, just like a month ago. Maybe he saw some of my stuff. Certainly possible. It was before Candace Owens' interview, but there was the redacted interview got really, really, really big. But I think there's a lot of people that know. There's a lot of people out there that know that the United States government's implicated in the disappearance of that plane, and that the public is just blissfully unaware. Like we're still on like, oh, the suicidal pilot, just just not thinking about like what our capabilities are or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's so big that nobody really wants to take the hit. Nobody really wants to put their neck out there and go, yeah, look, United States government did this. Like, because how do you explain it? Like, how do you explain it? Right. I can barely explain it. I've got all these witnesses corroborating a fire event. I've got these videos showing a fire, like these videos showing this science that is all out there. And I just asked myself, like, why is this being ignored? Well, because they don't have these videos. If somebody were to say, oh, these videos are real, then all the scientists in the world are going to go, oh, shit. We've had science wrong this whole time. It was like, oh, we could produce negative energy the whole time. We didn't think about the universe as like this sea of energy where we can just like dip into it and like get our negative energy out of there or add to it, and that's how I think we can get the truth for the MH370, the families, the victims, like, the science is proven true, but also we can figure out whether or not we're going to the Jetsons or the Flintstones.
Right.
Like,
you're welcome for that.
I don't know the answer to that, man.
But it's also Nacho. Me and Nacho both came up with that. Just I got to give him some credit. I want to ask, so this technology, is it new or is it ancient? Right? Yeah. Have we just been discovering it or rediscovering it? What do you think?
Yeah, and I'll leave I don't have any hard line in the sand on this topic.
Yeah, speculative.
I'll leave it to the other UFO disclosure people. They can fight over the scraps of that one. I'm like, hey, man, I just wanted to get in here, get that 0 point energy disclosed so I could get the truth to this missing airliner, guys. And you guys fight over how many species of aliens there are and what have you. But no, to me, I just like the ancient breakaway civilization ideas that like this science is not some unknowable concept. You don't have to like reach some certain level of enlightenment to understand it. It's just a way of looking at the universe. It's like if you look at the universe and see that you are a fish in a fishbowl, now you can see how what we call free energy, which is really just over unity and being able to interact with the reality at the subatomic level, at the quantum level. If you see that, you can manipulate it even without having super advanced material science. And this is where if you're somebody who likes the pyramids and the ancient history and this ancient lost civilization, which I think I like that as well, Atlantis, what have you, Tartaria, these other theories, like, you're going to like what I'm selling out here because I'm basically giving you the blueprints. They're saying this is how that could all be possible. A lot of these concepts don't require a very advanced technology to figure out. Right. And who knows? Maybe it's like, I don't know. Do you ever see that show with the Cylons?
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, you ever see that?
Yeah. Not the older. I saw the newer version.
Okay, yeah. So spoiler alert for everybody else. At the end, they like go to New Earth and it becomes the Earth, actually the real Earth. And then they
real Earth.
Take their plane, their ships, and they just shoot them into the sun. And they just go back to the Stone Age. And you're like, oh, I thought that was so stupid at the time.
I agreed.
Now, though, I'm going like, oh, well, maybe that's what happened. Maybe we were just like, we were idiots and we just threw our technology away. And maybe, we had some Battlestar Galactica thing happen here. So I don't know.
Did we throw it away? I mean, didn't Bob Lazar allude to the fact that one of the ships that he was working on is from an archaeological dig on the planet somewhere?
Well, that's another way to look at it too. Yeah, so maybe maybe we didn't throw them away into the sun. Maybe they just got buried over time, and it's just so much time has gone on. I personally just want to get real talk.
Of course.
I'm almost completely out on the Big Bang Theory at this point, and it's not because I believe in divine creation or what have you. It's more so that I think if the universe is a medium, then the tired light theory explains redshift. So why we see it, why it looks like everything's moving far away from us, is that the light as it's coming to us is getting redshifted. And because it's losing energy as it transmits through the medium, a little tiny bit over long distances. I think we're going to find out that's the case. And now we don't even need a Big Bang. We don't need this inflation to be happening anymore. It's going to throw a lot of wrenches into things. But if that's true, then the universe can be way older than we think. And already James Webb Space Telescope saw galaxies that are so far away, they're so formed, that it already shatters the old record. Like the old record of the universe is like 13 point something billion. Yeah, we're up to 26 now.
It's crazy.
Just in the last year. So we just added another 12 billion. And I've got newsflash. I think we're going to like, infinite age universe.
Infinite.
Also,
well, that makes sense to me, actually. Infinite. It's always been around.
Yeah. And the beauty of 0 point energy too is that now I think we don't have this situation where we have this, the universe uses up all its energy over some infinite period of time. Like now we're in this system, just like the water system that we have right now, where if I drink the water, it goes back through the toilet system, whatever, gets refreshed, or if it's out in the public, like the water is going to dissipate as steam, and then whatever, it's a cycle. The water is never being created or destroyed. Same with the energy.
Yeah.
It's just going back to its source. And I think that you look at the universe like that, now the universe becomes a very different place from how you think about it from the mainstream perspective of there was this big bang, and over a very long period of time, everything's gonna go dark and cold,
Yeah. Depressing. Well, also the universe becomes a lot smaller when you look at it that way. Which is
here's the things I want people to remember is space is not empty. Even what we look as empty space is not empty at all. That's your ether. That's your 0-point energy. That's your quantum foam. All these terms are just the same terms. Radiant energy. It's all this ocean of energy that's out there. There's enough energy in just a small area, just the size of this coffee cup. And while it's empty, like in the empty volume of this coffee cup, to boil all the Earth's oceans. Meaning that there's so much energy in the 0-point area. Yeah, we have infinite, basically. And then the last one is all points in space and time are connected. All points in space and time are connected.
That's like quantumly entangled?
Yeah, exactly. Quantumly entangled. All points in space and time are actually connected. Distance is an illusion. If you look up
past and future, you're also meaning like all points in space and time. That means everything from the past is connected to everything in the future. Is that also what under that umbrella?
I think I am saying that. So time is a flat circle, time is not linear. And that also what we perceive as distance is just a projection from a higher dimension onto our reality. Much
like what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, it's the 2D viewing 3D. Once you understand the fabric of what our reality is, it's being able to comprehend what the next iteration of reality or dimension is, right? Because what would be the next dimension is existing without time. So therefore, all time is the same point.
Well, it gets
which
weird.
is very hard to comprehend, but that's basically what you're saying there. And so I get what you mean.
Because there's mass or energy there, and the amount of mass or energy determines the rate of the flow of time.
Right.
This is why space and time are connected. And this is where it gets to be very weird, because the answer to your question is yes, but it's like, how do you even conceive of understanding that? The way you can conceive of it, the easiest way is that teleportation is possible. Remote viewing might be possible. Stuff where people have these psychic.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Tendencies. It's the door's open on it. Because of this idea where if I can teleport something from this location to this location faster than the speed of light, then now, everything, that means that these locations are actually right next to each other. At least for that second that they were. And how else do you explain that without the universe being a construct? To your point earlier, like we are figuring out the baseline code of how this universe operates.
Right.
Here's a spoiler. We don't need much more to have the complete understanding. Like if you guys start looking into the science of 0-point energy, you're going to find like we've got it like 99% figured out. Like there's like a little bit of wiggle room, and time is one of the big ones that I think we're still trying to grasp, which is what does it mean to have negative time? Am I actually going to the past? In a sense, you are. The area around you is going to the past, but the rest of the universe's entropy is still at the exact same state and still moving forward. So you're not going to go back to 1947 or whatever. You could reverse your aging potentially. Or a localized region. You could cure a tumor, stuff like that. There's some pretty cool ideas that you could pull off with reverse time, but it's not going to be what
Back to the future.
Are. Yeah, and that's how you get around the causality issue as well, is that there's no issue with causality because the outside entropy is still moving forward from wherever it was. Your entropy can just go backwards, so you can revert to a previous state.
And you don't think that it's different timelines? No, I want to hear what you were about to say.
That's one of the answers too, right? Is many worlds. So is everything deterministic, or is there a many worlds hypothesis? To me, the answer is time dilation corrects for all. We don't need either answer. Is that it's not deterministic, but because the entropy outside you is always going forward, then there's nothing to go back and change. Now, if you were to have a device that could change all of the entropy in the universe, then I think you could bring up a question of whether or not you always did what you chose or what have you. And so to me, I don't know. I don't think we can know exactly what the answer is there, but
wow.
Yeah, so time travel in general kind of getting ruled out a little bit by some of this physics, at least the way that we think of it. But there is time dilation, which is just as fun because you can definitely go to the future. It means that you can basically freeze yourself and then you can show up.
Well, the faster you go, right?
If you want.
I mean, we might have
full control over it. So yeah, but yes, the faster you go, the more time dilation you're going to experience, which is why
you could time travel to the future then. Technically.
Yeah, you can time travel to the future, definitely. That's on the table for sure.
Right.
Because
just not backwards.
Time travel to the future is keeping your state steady, frozen, while everything else zips around you. So yeah,
and the base form of it.
And that's doors open on that. I'm not going to proclaim to have any answers on all of that, honestly. Because, man, it's like it's already enough to like, hey, yeah, we've got balls of energy that they're like drones that we can control. Found the patents for it, found all the scientists that are writing about it. Oh, also, I want to figure out if time travel is real. Like, okay, it's like with the alien thing. Like, I'll let some other people figure that one out. But it's enough just to like have people's minds get wrapped around this to realize like this is not science fiction. We're now moving into the world where this is actually possible. And it does kind of suck that it took like this type of major conspiracy for this to come out. Like literally, the United States government's implicated in 2 videos of them getting caught filming this plane disappear out of space-time with this crazy advanced technology. That's a horrific. That's like a war crime. I mean, those are people on a civilian airliner.
It's true.
And as far as we know, they're dead. I mean, they haven't shown up anywhere.
Right. And how many other things have they swept under the carpet?
Yeah, that's
successfully.
The big thing, right? If they can pull, and this is why there's so much resistance. To be honest with you, especially political resistance. And what I'm talking about here is UFOlogy is very politically separated. Just like it's like Trump, anti-Trump, you got that same thing going on in the UFO community.
Yeah.
And for a lot of them, the idea that the government would commit a conspiracy like this and could convince them, there's people that are like, they believe in everything there is out there, but they're like, no, this I can't get my head around because like, this thing too means that the government committed some horrible, horrible stuff. And they put a show of force about it. Like they put on a whole production here with like this fire and then teleporting the plane away, the cover up in the media. To believe that the government can do all of that will shatter some people's minds 100%. I'm not personally somebody who really believes and trusts my government. I don't have any problem believing that they can pull something off like this, but for a lot of people, just not possible. And that's why I think I got this huge amount of pushback on this, because otherwise, like, you're looking at these videos and you're like, these videos are more credible than like 99.999% of the UFO videos that are out there. Like,
I've seen a bunch in the past year.
2 military videos, 2 completely different angles. They have a real world event going along with them as well. One's in infrared and some kind of satellite capabilities. The other one's in a thermal video as well. All 5 observables from the UFO phenomenon are in here, including literal teleportation of an object. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't get better than that. That's literally every checkbox you could ask for. If somebody came up with this as like some kind of hoax or prank, that person's a genius. I don't know how they could even have known about the science. The idea that we have these self-organizing plasmas where nobody was talking about this in 2014. They've now just recently started doing. A few fringe people have, but
Randall Carlson talks about the plasmoids a lot lately.
Although
from a different angle, using plasmoids to. Oh my God, I'm not going to even try to explain he doesn't even fully explain it. So when he talks about it, he kind of vaguely mentions.
Because I know. So
by all means, thank you.
the thing about negative energy is like you, I think, we're not going to understand it because you had said, okay, we're hacking into the code, the fundamental code. Well, imagine that in negative energy, if we apply negative energy to that code, imagine everything's just getting more and more complex. We're starting at this quantum level and then getting more and more complex. Eventually get to what we are at right here, right? But at one of the early stages, you get these photons out of the ether, and these create elements. The earliest, the lightest elements, hydrogen. Hydrogen finds oxygen, and what do they want to do? They want to make water, H2O.
Right.
So now you apply some negative energy to that hydrogen and oxygen. What's going to happen to it? It actually just breaks apart, releases that energy, and just breaks apart naturally when you just take it down one level. So we have it up here at water. We go down now to hydrogen and oxygen. This is what these cold fusion people have figured out. Is you're going, wait, are we doing fusion now? Because you break down the hydrogen and oxygen, and then you pass the hydrogen and oxygen where you can have them recombine. You can use them as engine fuel. This is what like these people are claiming. Stanley Meyer with his water engine,
the water car,
Luminescence is using the same concepts. They're just figuring out how to manipulate the 0-point energy at very small scales in order to cause like fusion reactions to happen at lower temperatures. Wow. And this is what cold fusion is. So when you're seeing these now, when you look at the world differently with this energy level, you go, oh, we can get to negative energy now. You guys, oh, interacting with negative energy actually interacts differently than if we were interacting with the positive energy. And when we do this, this is how we can really just open the door to everything you would see in Fallout or Star Trek or what have you, is that it all of a sudden becomes real. And there's some big name people that have been pushing these theories, including like Winterberg, who was taught underneath Heisenberg in terms of like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. He came over to America from Project Paperclip, which was where we like took all the scientists from Germany.
Yep.
And he's a guy that proposed this idea as well of the Planck ether, which is this 0-point energy basically out there. It's like, of course, it's all just out there. And I don't know if you really want to know why it's hidden or what have you. Nobody reads scientific papers. Nobody reads them. Like somebody sent me a stat that like less than 10 people per average read any given scientific paper. So like nobody's reading these scientific papers that are out there. When I post scientific papers, they get no interaction. Yeah, like nothing.
Yeah. Well, they're hard to take in. I've attempted to read a few in the past year of certain things that I've discovered, and I'm like, this is fantastic. And I start reading, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how do I comprehend this? Because it's so dense, the material, and it's such it's always from a perspective of understanding all of it. So they're just talking about it instead of like trying to speak to someone who doesn't understand it and explain it all. Because you can't just be like, here, let me explain all of the science that I've learned throughout my life that has helped me get to this point to understand what this paper is in here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that there's certain people that write where it's easier to understand it conceptually.
Okay.
And
certain
the more
scientists
focused your paper is, the better. Like a lot of them are about a specific experiment, but that's not a requirement. Some of them are either about specific theories. But I would urge people to read the scientific papers themselves as opposed to always reading like whatever the write-up was about the scientific paper that has some grandiose claims. The only benefit of those are they'll often quote somebody from the paper that they spoke to get a quote from them. Because it's always best to hear from the scientists directly that talks about them. But if you use Grok and AI and those tools to Google the concepts, like they're really good about explaining the concepts to you. And it doesn't take that long to figure it out, where it's kind of like learning a new language, where at first it's rough. You have to look up every single thing. But the more you repeat it, very quickly you get to a point where you can read those papers without having to look anything up, and you're going to start understanding them as well.
That makes sense.
And then it's a matter of like, I already listed a few scientists that are worth checking out. Salvatore Pais is one that I think that his papers are easy to read because I think they were intentionally written vague since his patents were approved under the Navy. And he's got they call them UFO patents, but they're not really UFO patents. At the end of the day, they're just advanced scientific concepts. But if you add them together, you get plasma orb. You get a plasma orb that can just freely float around. And his papers are great because he writes in a way where like normal people can understand them, including like you can amplify energy to destroy an asteroid. You're like, wait, what? Can amplify energy? Okay. And we can destroy an asteroid. So yes, check out Salvatore Pais' stuff. I'm hoping that Congress starts talking to people like Salvatore Pais and some of these other engineers. The downside is they probably have NDAs if they worked on this kind of stuff. So I don't know how much they can say. But what's your other option? Your other option is you talk to somebody like me, right? And I'm just a guy who's a researcher, an investigator. I'm not a first-hand witness. So, it's not really, doesn't have the same push. But I'm going to interview Salvatore Pais next month. And
nice.
Yeah, he got permission from the Navy he has to speak as like an independent person because it's a different thing. If like you're going to testify, you have to go through, like he has to get approval from the Navy down there, and they're never going to give Congress, like they'll never give him approval to talk. But as an individual, I can ask better questions to Congress, especially because I already understand like the lay of the land of the science and stuff now. So I can ask him pointed questions about like which scientists he likes and believes in related to cold fusion, plasma research. And we're going to find out that he's going to be like very familiar with all these concepts at a bare minimum. Cool. And
when's that? That sounds awesome.
November 24th. Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
November
24th. Yeah, so in a month. And it's going to be partial. It's not going to be antagonistic, but I am going to like kind of be interrogative about it. I'm going to interrogate him a little bit and try to get some answers to some tough questions. I'm going to show him that same zap I just showed you guys. And like, I'm going to just like, keep the door open and be like, hey, what do you notice when you see this? Like, I want to get his fresh opinion on like what he's looking at for a guy that like has worked on aerospace projects. I know he understands the idea of 0-point energy. I would be surprised if he doesn't immediately say, oh, I noticed there's like negative energy here, and like, that's the litmus test, If you talk to a physicist, you show him that and you go like, just, assume this is real here. What do you see here? And if they come back and they go, oh, negative energy, negative entropy, like then they're a legit one. If they come back and they're like, video game graphics, then, you don't learn anything. Don't listen to anything they say.
I'm excited for it because I can feel how excited you are to talk to this guy. So it's going to be a good interview. So that's fantastic. So I usually do about an hour and a half, and we're approaching 2 hours. I saw a couple chats. I just want to read those. And before I even read those, I just want to remind everyone, please go check out his content. It's fantastic. He streams all the time. I'm constantly talking about everything that's happening in this field. So if you're interested, please go follow him in the description below. You have his X account and also his YouTube channel where he goes live. And definitely go check him out. Okay, we got, let's see here. Martin for 2 says, guest watches too much Big Bang Theory, wish theory. I doubt it. No, you don't look like a Big Bang guy.
Yeah, no, not a Big Bang. But here's a fun story. I did do a set tour on the Big Bang Theory one time and watched a recording of a thing because my aunt has worked in set design her whole life, and so she like knew those people and the producer and stuff like that. And this was back before it was huge, but it was like ramped up. And,
but the laugh track is real. Tell us, no one laughed, did they?
No, they actually have a real audience, and they have the people. They get there's like a magician who comes in, or like an entertainer who comes in to like keep people excited, so that when they do the recording, they always have them.
The show is so boring that they have to hire in entertainers.
Yeah, no, it's cringe how they do it, but I'm not a Big Bang Theory person.
No, I didn't think so.
I'm just a normal guy that I realized early on those videos were real, also because of a Citrix session that was being used in one of those videos, and that was already more than enough. But the science and all of this stuff, it's going to end up being real. It's going to end up being real, 100% sure, no doubt whatsoever. It's just a matter of how long it takes people to come to terms with it. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what we choose there, however long we want that to take, that's up to us as humans. I won't blame anybody for wanting to keep it secret for another 100 years. We can live boring, normal lives, and not worry about the Star Trek age coming out.
It's happening. It's coming. Logan Miller for 10.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Nope, go for it.
Okay, Logan Miller for 10 says 1 of 10. November 13th, UAP hearing with Congress. Is catastrophic disclosure coming? Sure would help the government out with losing the election and all. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like the tides are turning, and everyone is I don't know, making sure they're going to be good when Trump wins. Go ahead, what?
Yeah, I know what they're going to say in that hearing for sure. You're definitely going to hear a lot about USOs. They're going to add a new acronym, unidentified submersible objects. You're going to hear them talk about the Navy seeing these things underwater all the time as well. We're like, we already knew they were transmedium, so they can travel between water and the air. Who cares? Like,
well, that's why they call them UAPs. Why would they even USOs? That wouldn't even make sense.
You hear people going, "Oh, aliens are real, blah blah blah," which is like, okay, even if they're real, I don't care. How does that? Unless they're coming down and they're visiting me, how does this change my world? Again, I always remember, guys.
Blue beam. They still got blue beam.
Blue beam is definitely going to come too, because if you see these balls of energy coming down, people are going to think all kinds of stuff. Like they're going to think it's the rapture. They're going to think the aliens are invading. And I'm like, no, the U.S. government has that technology, guys. Don't fall for the trick. Don't fall for it. But I do think that Trump has a better chance of getting disclosure than Harris. I mean, Harris is under the Obama Biden regime, and the intelligence community is like behind them 100%. A lot of those people know about what happened to this plane as well. They're not going to be the ones to give disclosure. Our best bet in this particular case is Trump, although he's not guaranteed either.
Facts. Vote. Well, I know everyone who watches me is definitely going to be voting. Logan Miller gifted 5 memberships to the channel. Logan, you're a G. I appreciate you. You dropped a super chat. Thank you very much. Sorry for your ears there. Thank you very much for those 5 gifted memberships. Long Walks Music for a Rumble rant. For 1 says Forever Halloween out now. Chill song about Halloween and nostalgia. Perfect for relaxing after taking the kids trick-or-treating or just enjoying the spooky season. Long Walks Music on Rumble and YouTube. Oh, you're on YouTube now. All right, nice. Good shit. Long Walks Music again says, I shared the video for Forever Halloween over on Locals for you to listen to at your leisure. I'd even say this one is more than adequate, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. God bless y'all. Thank you, Long Walks, and but I appreciate it. I'll check it out. Yeah. I didn't know. I haven't been paying attention too much because, like I said earlier, I have a newborn, and he is kind of taking over my life and dictating what I am able to do. Kasama for 5 says, if you're reading this, the temporal experiment worked. I will send this super chat at 11/6/2024. Wow, very cool. I like that. It's a good one.
Awesome.
Well, Ashton, as I said earlier, and I really mean this, I would love to get you on Forbidden Frontier. It is a much bigger platform than mine, and we would love to have you over there. I know they would be fascinated by everything we've talked about today. Yeah, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. And anytime you ever want to jump on and explain something new or use my platform, just hit me up and let me know.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Well, everyone, that's the show. That was awesome. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, in the description below, you have his links. Go follow him. He is constantly posting awesome stuff about this and digging further into this whole field, which I feel is the new horizon of the human reality, right, of what we're existing in. And I'm here for it, and I'm excited. So I will see you all next time. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in. You guys are the best. Cheers.